Welcome to the Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva, and today we're going to get some insight into athletics at the college level. My guest today is Janice Quinn. She is the Senior Associate Director of Athletics at NYU. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
So usually I start my guests where they went to college. So where'd you go to school?
So I went to NYU, started as an undergraduate in 1981. Have a dual degree in economics and metropolitan studies, the study of the city.
Wow.
Love the business, love the city. I have a degree from NYU's Wagner School of Public Service, and at the time they let me finagle around a little bit, so I took a good majority of my courses at the what was at that time called the Graduate School of Business Administration. Now people know it as Stern. So a little bit of the public sector finance, a little bit of the private sector finance, and so three degrees, four based on how you count, and have been there ever since. So 1981, a lot of years.
Yeah. So let's go back in time a little. Go back into high school. Tell me, what was the process that got you to NYU? Was it the only school, or did you have a variety of different schools?
Well, I graduated from a pretty typical Catholic high school on Long Island, St. John the Baptist, and so all of us. I come from a family of six children. All went through that process. I was fortunate or not fortunate enough that I had a state championship wrestler brother, and I also had a valedictorian brother that preceded me. So when I came along, they thought, which way was I going to go? And actually I gravitated towards both. I really gravitated towards the athletics, and I really gravitated towards the academics, both.
Wow.
And so for me, my family, everything was education. My parents stressed it from as young as I could possibly remember, that they just emphasized doing well in school and constantly reaching for the best that you could do. Yeah. So when I was looking for colleges, I looked and found myself gravitating towards a lot of schools that looked very much like my St. John the Baptist, high school experience. And then, my short list was school like Boston College, Georgetown, Catholic University, a lot of great institutions, and they looked very much and they felt very much when you went on campus like my high school in terms of demographics, feel, that kind of thing. And then right at the last minute, I kind of put the brakes on, and I just, announced to my parents, I don't think I'll be going to college. I was graduating, very high in my class, not valedictorian, but I was graduating very, very high, went through all the AP honors kind of a program. Wow. And I just got disenchanted with, I thought, well, it doesn't seem to be that exciting. It kind of seems like it's just going to be an away version of everything I just had. And it was great, but just didn't seem that different. And I decided that I was going to pursue business in some way, and I was not going to go to college. And my dad let me think about that for about 7 seconds. And I remember coming down the next day, and my twice educated Harvard brother, valedictorian, and my dad were talking with my mom at the kitchen table, and I could hear them as I came downstairs. And somebody said, well, listen, let her go to NYU for a year. Have her go to NYU or Columbia for a year. She'll do great in school, and then let her think about this, and she could start the process again a year from now. And that was the plan, that I was going to go to NYU for a minute and a half, get good grades, and then kind of think about that process a year later and think about what I wanted to do. And I remember, arriving on campus, and the energy level was so different than anything I had ever experienced. It was, very intense, very dynamic, very non-stagnant. It was, the energy level, in the city is through the roof. And I came home, I think, the second day of school, and I had the bumper sticker. At that time, it was in vogue for every time you had a student go to college, you put the name right on the end, the back of the glass of the car.
Sure.
And so I wanted my New York University right there, after my brother's 2 schools. I was the third in my family, third of 6 to go to college. And that was it. I don't ever remember thinking about it until I was then asked many years later as a professional, what school did you go to and what did you plan on doing? Then I had to reflect and say I never really intended on going to NYU, but once I got there, it was just a really exciting environment for me. So it stuck.
Great. So now you're at NYU. What's the school like?
Well, as I sort of led into it, I mean, I can tell you that having been there since 1981, that's a lot of years.
Yeah.
Right? It's a lot of years. It is the kind of place that just never slows down. It never gets boring. It never stays the same. So it's an environment where everybody that you meet, whether it's the staff, the faculty, the presidents, the administration, the students, everybody is looking for the next best thing. They're goal oriented. They want the next thing, whether it's the person who wants to be the next best TV producer or film director. They want to be the next Spike Lee. They want to be president. They want to be a hedge fund manager. They want to be the next curator of the Met. Wow. They want to be a doctor. They want to be a lawyer. So you meet really, really diverse people in the staff and in the student body. But everybody has, even though they come from everywhere in the world and everywhere in the country, there's a New York energy, a New York City energy that,
sure.
And I know you've been there, so you feel it a little bit just walking down the street. There's just an energy to it that's very, very different. And I gravitated to it. So obviously, here we are 35 years later, I haven't felt like I've caught up to the place yet. You feel like it's constantly growing and changing and challenging you. And even in my job, I think it continuously, challenges you.
So now you graduate from NYU. Tell me the process, because you never left NYU. So tell me the process. What were the steps that you took to get to Senior Associate Director of Athletics?
Well, when I left, again, going back to the beginning, my parents just stressed education. So graduating from NYU, the thought about immediately getting an MBA or immediately going to law school was pretty right there in the list of things to do. And so I was busy applying and getting admitted to some good law schools when the then head coach, I had just finished playing basketball there as an undergraduate, and the then head coach said, hey, if you're going to be here getting a master's in Wagner, do you want to help out the team? And I thought, well, for a couple $1,000s, 75 hours a week for a couple $1,000s a year, which was typical back then. And I said, great, I'd like to do that. I'd like to, continue to be involved in the program while I got my master's in finance. And, I still did not think that I would in any way pursue coaching or athletic administration for a living. I did it. I was hustling, doing my master's degree and doing the coaching. But after my second year of doing that, the head coach left. And so here I was, 23 years of age, and I was admitted to law school. I had finished the master's, so now I really was now going to go to law school. And because the head coach left, there was this gigantic opening. And I thought, well, I talked to my mom and dad, and they said, well, so I said, well, what if I did it just for a year? What if I did it just for a year or two? And they kind of let me think about it for a little while. And they said, all right, as long as you're then going to go to law school. And, the coaching bug bit me. And once I got a taste of coaching, it was just really, really exciting for me.
So you were coaching basketball there?
So I was coaching basketball in NYU for 23 years. I think 23. We have to fact check me on that. So I was an assistant coach for 2 years and then a head coach for 23, and coaching college basketball at NYU and also being an assistant athletic director. The job had both parts. So I kind of did the coaching because I was doing my master's, and when I got an opportunity to be the head coach, which I had intended on, like my decision to come to NYU, which was going to be temporary, my decision to coach was going to be very temporary, and I had put a couple of law schools on deferment that were willing to let me defer admission. And I started coaching, and we started winning, and that winning was very seductive. Winning was very, very seductive. So I coached for a lot of years. But all along the way, I was doing athletic administration at the same time. And I think most people who knew me thought, well, eventually she'll give up the administration and she'll continue to do the coaching. And I kind of flipped that a little bit.
So you just stopped the coaching?
I stopped the coaching. I think I now have celebrated my 10th year of not coaching.
Wow.
So this is my 10th year of not coaching. I mean, we had tremendous success. We won a national championship. We went to the Final Four a good number of times, did the Sweet 16 a bunch of times, Elite Eight. So we really experienced success on a high level. And doing it with great athletes and great students at the same time was seductive. And so you just find yourself, a year becomes 5 years, becomes 10, becomes 20.
Yeah, before you know it, sure.
Right, so then I stepped away from that because I really wanted to pursue a little bit more of the business of athletics and more of the higher education side of it. So I was, very fortunate at NYU that I could give up the coaching and stayed on, and now I'm the senior associate.
So now, let's get into the athletics at NYU. What type of high school students is NYU looking for to play athletics at NYU?
So we need a very specific profile of student. I think there were more than 70,000 applications last year to get into NYU, and about 4,000 get admitted. So it's really, really tough academically to get in. You have to legitimately have that academic profile, whatever that means. Test scores, academics,
Sure.
Recommendations. You have to really have a full academic profile, to get in. And then, of course, really, you have to be, pretty darn good athlete. So the athletes that do well in our conference, we're part of the University Athletic Association, the UAA. Arguably one of the best Division III conferences in the country.
So who do you play against, just for people out there that don't know?
So the UAA is Washington University in St. Louis, University of Chicago, Case Western Reserve in Cleveland, Carnegie Mellon, Pittsburgh, Emory University in Atlanta, Brandeis University, Boston, University of Rochester. So pretty high-powered, mostly urban institutions.
Yeah.
And actually, it was the president of NYU many years ago who had this. We call it "I have this idea," and he said, "Well, what if we did on the Division III level? What if we found great athletes and we found great students, and we weren't willing to compromise on either one? What could we do if presidents really put their money where their mouth was in really financially supporting, the operations and the travel and the schedule that kind of a conference would command? What could we do?" And he originally had envisioned it to be a basketball primary conference. If you look across the UAA, the number of national championships across all sports, whether it's swimming, tennis,
Sure.
Golf, soccer, basketball, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's just really remarkable. There is absolutely a niche out there in the country where you have great athletes who could play Division I and Division II, who want an NYU Ivy League level education, and they want the New York City, and they
Sure.
want the global network. They want our 14 campuses that they could get all over the world, and you put that together, and that spells NYU.
So how many sports are at NYU?
24 varsity sports. The only major sport we don't have is football. It's tough to have a field in the middle of Manhattan. But men's basketball, women's basketball, men's volleyball, big sport, women's volleyball, men's and women's swimming, men's and women's diving, men's and women's golf,
Wow.
full slate of cross country, men and women, indoor track, outdoor track, full slate, fencing. And many of our sports are top 10 in the nation. So it's pretty heady, it's pretty weighty stuff to
Yeah.
be able to be taking, that level academic student who's competing nationally at that level. Obviously the old adage is, you can't be, you think about my own high school experience, right? So was I going to go more towards my brother who was valedictorian, or more towards my brother who was a state championship wrestler? And at NYU, they try to get both. They try to get the valedictorians who are state championship wrestlers, and that's how it's a unique it's a unique experience. But 450 varsity athletes prove every year that they can do it.
Yeah.
That's part of why the faculty and the administration and the students. I mean, that's indicative of the kind of environment that it is. You get special people there who end up doing special things.
So a big question that a lot of parents always have is cost, right? Is there anything that the university has, and merit money, academic money, things like that help in the cost? Because NYU is probably just as high as some Ivy League schools.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that the NYU education is an elite premier degree, and for the most part, you'll end up paying for it. It's not going to be as less expensive as other institutions. There's financial aid, there's academic scholarships, there's that type of thing. But on a very large price tag of that amount, it's not going to cut into it that much. It's not going to make it the equivalent of a lower cost state institution, no matter how you twist it.
Sure.
But for the families who can afford it and can find a way to squeeze the price tag with their ability, it's obviously it's a premier opportunity for people that can get in and can be successful there academically and athletically, and can find a way financially to make it work.
So tell me a little bit about what a student athlete is going to experience when they get to NYU.
Well, the experience that the NYU student athlete has is in some ways directly parallel to the student, which is a very, very high-powered academic environment. It's a serious program. You know, for some people, they'll tell you the hardest thing to get into a certain institution, the hardest thing is getting into a certain institution. Yeah. That's not true at NYU. As the people who graduate will tell you, when you come out of there, there's a reason why the graduate programs and the employers are begging to recruit on campus for the NYU student, because they're just that much more mature, they're that much more experienced. They're living in the Big Apple, they're living in New York City for 4 years. They have to come out different. So it's a very high-powered, internship-driven, academic environment, and so the athletes will experience that. The difficulty for the athletes is, at the same time that they're experiencing that, they're experiencing what most people think of as a Division I program in terms of the commitment, in terms of the coaching, in terms of the travel. Whereas a lot of our kids will say, well, you know, I was going to go to school X, but they told me it'd be very difficult to be pre-med or to be pre-law at that institution and be an athlete. And NYU says, come on, come here, we'll figure it out for you. Yeah. So the athletic department makes a lot of accommodations for those kind of students to figure out and navigate how you get through that rigorous and academic program. And you want to be a surgeon? Then we want you to be a surgeon. But if you're a state championship wrestler, or you have the ability to win a national championship in swimming and wrestling and basketball and soccer, I mean, these things happen at NYU every day. If you have that ability, then we're really going to support you. It requires a lot of mentality of, I think the athlete experience is an all hands on deck feeling for the whole athletic department to try to help them get it done.
So does the student athlete get study time within the environment of the sport as well?
Well, every coach is going to create the environment and the culture that they want around that particular sport, because the culture of swimming, of course, is they're up at 5 and they're out of the pool by the time most college students or athletes are getting out of bed. The swimmer's already done and are heading to class. So the culture is a little bit different in every sport, but you don't think of it in the sense of study hall, whereas there are kids that really need remedial help. It's not that environment, but what the coaches do is, in some cases, they're a sort of group study. But it's really a matter of each coach helping their team, their 15 members, figuring out how to navigate the 24 hours that are in their life. As athletes, Olympic athletes sleep 11 to 12 hours a day. That's what an Olympic athlete needs. A college athlete doesn't have that luxury. But we try to get them the 7 to 8 hours of sleep. So then we have to help them and say, how are we going to help you navigate the other 16 hours of your day? Let's start with the academics. Let's start with the classes. Let's start when you're going to study on your own. What internships are you doing? And we basically piece together for each individual athlete how to help manage their 24 hours. It's diabolically different than what they experienced in high school, where they were doing so many things. Now here the focus is really on 3. It's on academics, it's on athletics, and it's on internships, and trying to focus their energy on those 3.
So now, in your position, what requirements are you doing in your position? Is there scheduling? Is there, calling up for donations? I don't know what the position takes.
So every athletic department sort of divides up the tasks differently. Our assistant vice president for student affairs and our director of athletics, Chris Bledsoe, kind of has it divided through his senior associates. I have a colleague, Frank Sicignano, who's one of the senior associates, and my side of the house is really varsity athletics and everything that has to do with varsity athletics, also some special events and fundraising. So yes, I have to do a lot of asking for money all the time, but my primary role is helping the 15 head coaches and all of the support staff that we provide in the department, and helping all of them help our 450 varsity athletes. So if it's something that impacts our student athlete, then that's something that I'm worried about. Gotcha. Whether it's their academic schedule, whether it's their logistics of travel, whether it's their athletic training, whether it's their sports medicine, academic affairs, mental wellness issues, performance issues, anything, if it involves, if the coach has to worry about it for the athlete, then I have to worry about it for the coach.
Wow, interesting. So now, how does NYU go about finding a lot of these students? Are they combing the country, recruiting? Are they traveling all over the place, like a Notre Dame or something like that?
Yeah, there's quite a bit of travel. I mean, there's no question that if you look on our roster, if you just Google any of the rosters, you see people from all over the country, up and down the East Coast, up and down the West Coast, everywhere in between, and you'll see an awful lot of students international. Certain ones of our sports really attract it. Swimming, golf, track, fencing, a lot of our sports really attract an international clientele. But what our coaches have to do is really vet the students and their situation before we really even go out and look at them. So they're looking, they don't want to, we don't want to sell the product to somebody who really can't get in. Mm-hmm. So understanding what their true academic profile is, not what we think it is, but what it really is, understanding their true academic profile and understanding what the family situation is in terms of, are they of the mindset to really send a student to New York City? Some families are, some families are not. Yeah. So we try to vet a lot of that and vet their playing ability before we get out on the road. But then, of course, it's July. My coaches are everywhere. I have coaches right now, anywhere in the country looking at athletes in every sport. But we don't just, the old-fashioned method would be a coach to sit in a venue and look at 400 or 500 athletes. Right. And they liked the way they looked, and then they went back and vetted the academics. We kind of do it the opposite. We're strictly looking at the mindset and willingness to be in New York and the academics. And then we look for those that fit that profile, and now we have to find the ones that can play. Wow. So of the 72,000 students that will apply for NYU next year, could be higher, NYU has broken its own record for the last 15 years. More people apply to NYU as a private institution than apply each year to any private institution in the country. Yeah. And then they keep breaking their own records. So the numbers are kind of staggering. But our hope is, for the golf team, just sign the right two. Right, that can really lower those numbers. For the swim team, sign the right 6 men, 6 women. For the basketball team, same thing, sign the right 4 athletes in each sport. So, you pare down the numbers to more manageable, numbers by sport. And that's what the 15 head coaches are really charged with doing.
Yeah, so each coach is giving the student a good evaluation on what they're looking at first before they do anything with that student.
Exactly.
So you said grades. You said their ability. Do you see a lot of students that go to big time schools outside of NYU that you couldn't get?
Yeah, I mean, of course, the numbers are. I mean, what we know at our level is that there's an awful lot of talent out there. Sure. And our job, the coach's job is, and really in any program, is to find the best suited student for that environment. Mm-hmm. And because NYU and the UAA is so unique, that one of our charges for the coaches is really to educate the club coaches, the high school coaches, and so forth, what is available. Because many years ago when I went to NYU, there was no such real thing as Division III athletics, particularly for women. I think even Dr. Oliva couldn't imagine when he started this conference of the UAA that it would grow so much, that the Division III men's and women's basketball would be playing such a high level of athletics. They're at the highest level, not at the low levels of Division III, but at the highest level of Division III. You look across and you can point and you could say they could have played Division I, they could have played Division I, they could have played Division I. Yeah. And so for the right students, it's a matter of finding the right match. So even though they could go to Princeton or Harvard or Yale, they choose NYU for a particular reason. They could have played at different Division I institutions, but they choose NYU for a unique reason. So that vetting process is pretty hands-on. It's pretty labor-intensive. It's not kind of the thing that you can just do just by email or data verifying what things are. You really have to it's real hand-to-hand combat to learn about the student and their family, because when we bring somebody in, we want to make sure that it's really, really well matched.
Interesting. So we're coming to the end of our show. And usually I ask my guests, what advice do you want to give to the families out there that their sons and daughters are interested in coming to NYU? What advice do you want to give to them?
Well, I think the best advice that I give every student that comes through, both when I was coaching, for 23 years, and even today when I meet with the students who are looking at NYU, I tell them, don't sit back as an athlete specifically and wait and hope that a school that you might be interested in contacts you. I think that's the mistake that a lot of people make. They spend a lot of money on AAU and club sports. They go to these venues and they just hope that being there, that the right person will happen to see them on that day. And by the way, hopefully they played well on that day, right? It could be a superstar that didn't play well on that day and just kind of gets missed and gets passed over. And the advice that I give to families is, think about the kind of school that you want to go to. Pick up the phone and call them. This is what my academic profile is. This is what my athletic profile is. Very, very easy on YouTube to upload so that a coach can see instantly in his office. Doesn't have to move to see what that playing ability is and what the academic profile is. And so I tell parents, don't sit back and wait for colleges to contact you. Don't be afraid to think about what you really want. The area of the country, the academic kind of school, big school, little school, city, rural. What is it that you want? pick up the phone or send an email and say, this is who I am. Might there be any interest? And I think that's kind of turning the tables a little bit, instead of sitting back and having less control and waiting for the right coach to call you. That's a heck of a way to make a decision as important as your college education. That a coach who may be in that institution and gone a year from now, that whether or not they saw you play is going to be the basis of your decision. I think you should flip the table and do it the other way around.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah. So you've been watching The Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva. Until next time.